All right, ready for a deep dive. Today, we're tackling a career path you've been eyeing, hospitality establishment security officer. Got some RoleCatcher excerpts here. Seems like the platform for job seekers. Think we can uncover some hidden gems.
Oh, absolutely. I'm fascinated by this one. It's amazing how much depth there is beneath what some might see as just a security guard role. These guides are gold mines.
Right. So much info packed in. For someone interested in this specific security officer role, what's the biggest takeaway from these RoleCatcher guides?
It's more than just being a guard. The guide emphasizes, like really emphasizes, that you're managing the entire security process.
Wow. Okay. So we're talking
Right.
what? Developing policies, doing risk assessments, training staff.
Exactly. It's strategic thinking,
Yeah.
being proactive, not just reacting to situations.
That's a whole different ballgame. And it seems like you need a very particular set of skills. The guide mentions criminal justice degrees right alongside hospitality management.
See, fascinating, right? That mix is so interesting. You need that security mindset, but also the people skills to work in hospitality. Diplomacy, that's key.
Makes sense. You're dealing with guests, after all, not just patrolling a building.
Right, and the guide even talks about handling surveillance equipment in one breath, then de-escalating a situation with a difficult guest in the next. It's a real balancing act.
Okay, I'm picking up on a theme here. Stressful. The guide mentions emergencies, difficult guests, even potential drug abuse situations.
Yeah, the guide's very upfront about that it's high stress, irregular hours, potential for danger.
Hmm.
Not trying to sugarcoat it.
Definitely something to consider. But on the flip side, there's room to grow. The guide talks about moving up from entry level to security manager, even director of security.
Right, not a dead-end job at all. There's a path.
Yeah.
And getting those certifications, like the guide mentions, that certified hospitality security supervisor, that can make a difference.
So someone who likes variety, who's good with people, good at solving problems, and who wants to move up the ladder, this could be a good fit.
Absolutely. And it's a career where you can have a real impact. The guide stresses preventing incidents, not just reacting to them. That's a big responsibility.
It's not just a job, it's about keeping people safe. Okay, last question before we dive into the nitty-gritty. What's one thing someone should really think about if they're considering this career, based on what we've seen in these excerpts?
The guide talks about AI, automation, all that, and how it's changing how companies hire people. They emphasize using tools like RoleCatcher to stand out. So, beyond the job skills themselves, being tech-savvy is becoming crucial, even just to get these security jobs in the future.
Wow, that adds a whole other layer to think about. It's not just how you do the job, but how you even get in the door.
Exactly. The future is here.
Okay, so let's rewind a bit and get back to the basics. What are the core day-to-day responsibilities you would handle as a hospitality establishment security officer? What does a typical day look like?
Well, first and foremost, it's about creating that secure environment. You're responsible for the safety of guests, staff, the whole property, really.
So you're managing the security of the whole place, but let's break it down. What are the specific tasks you'd be doing on any given day?
It's a really interesting mix of visible and behind-the-scenes work. On the one hand, you've got things like patrolling the property, making your presence known. And of course, there's monitoring those surveillance systems. That's huge.
So you're literally keeping an eye on things, making sure nothing seems out of place.
Exactly. But then there's the strategic stuff too. Conducting those security assessments, figuring out where the weak points are, developing protocols for different situations.
So you're not just reacting, you're thinking ahead, trying to prevent things from happening in the first place.
Precisely. And it's not a solo mission. Collaboration is key. You'd be working with other staff, training them on security procedures, integrating security measures with different departments.
Right, you mentioned staff training earlier. What does that involve?
Well, it's about empowering everyone to be more security conscious. So, for example, training the front desk staff on how to spot suspicious behavior, how to handle those situations, or working with housekeeping, making sure they know the protocols for lost and found items, things like that.
Interesting. So it's about creating a culture of security, not just having a security team in the background.
Exactly. It's everyone's responsibility.
Okay, so we've established that this role is all about building a security-conscious environment, but what about the skills and qualifications you'd need to excel? The guide goes into detail about what it takes to thrive as a hospitality establishment security officer.
It does, and it's a really fascinating mix. You have your essential security know-how, of course. You need a good grasp of security procedures and protocols. You need to be comfortable with surveillance equipment, access control systems, all that.
Right, those seem like the basics for any kind of security role.
Yeah, and you need to be physically fit, no question about it.
Makes sense. Got to be able to handle whatever comes your way.
Right. But then it gets interesting because the guide also emphasizes, and I think this is so important, the customer service aspect. They stress those communication and interpersonal skills
That makes sense, especially in hospitality. You're interacting with guests constantly, right?
all the time,
Hmm.
as well as staff from different departments. You might even work with local law enforcement in some cases. So yeah, diplomacy is crucial.
It's not just about being tough, it's about being approachable and professional.
Exactly. Remember, you're representing the establishment.
Right, you're an ambassador as much as you are a security officer.
Exactly. And on top of that, you need those problem-solving skills, that ability to think on your feet and make good decisions under pressure.
Because things can escalate quickly in a hospitality environment, I
Oh,
imagine.
absolutely. You never know what you're going to walk into.
Now, the guide does mention that previous experience in security or law enforcement is usually preferred. But does that mean it's a deal breaker if you don't have it?
Not necessarily. While prior experience is great, the guide also suggests looking into those entry-level positions to gain practical experience.
Hmm.
You could start as a security guard, maybe a loss prevention officer. Even internships or part-time jobs in hospitality can be really valuable.
So it's more about demonstrating that interest, that willingness to learn and work your way up.
Exactly, taking initiative. And this actually ties into another point that the guide stresses: certifications.
Mhm.
We touched upon the Certified Hospitality Security Supervisor certification earlier, but there are others as well.
Right. Those certifications not only demonstrate your knowledge and skills, but they also show potential employers that you're serious about your career, that you're committed to professional development.
It shows you going the extra mile.
Absolutely. And in a field that's constantly changing, with all the new technologies and security threats popping up all the time, staying up to date is crucial.
Oh, absolutely. You got to stay ahead of the game.
Which actually reminds me, we keep coming back to this technology aspect. That section in the guide about AI and automation changing how recruiting works, that's huge, right?
It's a game changer. Your resume might be getting scanned by an algorithm before a human even lays eyes on it. So yeah, being tech savvy is more important than ever.
It's like the guide is saying, master those security skills, but don't forget to level up your digital game too.
Right. It's the future of work.
Okay, so we've talked about what the responsibilities, the skills needed, but let's get into the why. What makes this security role different, maybe even more appealing than, say, guarding a shopping mall?
Ah, that's a great question. The guide touches upon this, but I think it comes down to a few things. First off, the hospitality industry itself. It's
Yeah.
dynamic, it's people-oriented. There's always something going on. You're not just guarding a building, you're part of this whole experience.
It's about creating a safe and enjoyable environment for guests, right?
Exactly. And unlike some security roles that can be a bit more isolated or repetitive, this one offers so much variety. You might be handling guest inquiries one minute, then responding to an emergency the next, then maybe investigating an incident, then implementing a new security protocol. It's never dull.
So if you thrive on variety and enjoy working with people in a fast-paced environment, this could be a good fit.
Absolutely.
But of course, we can't ignore the downsides. We talked about the irregular hours and the potential for dangerous situations, but what else does the guide flag as potential challenges?
Well, the guide is very upfront about the stress factor. Remember, you're dealing with people, and people can be unpredictable, especially in a hospitality setting where emotions can run high.
Right, you've got people celebrating, maybe having a few too many drinks. It's not always going to be calm and predictable.
Exactly. Things can escalate quickly.
And the guide does mention the potential for encountering difficult or even unruly guests. How do you handle that while still maintaining that hospitality mindset?
That's the challenge, right? You need to be able to de-escalate situations, enforce policies without being confrontational, and always, always, always maintain your composure.
Which takes a lot of patience and resilience.
It does. And it's not for everyone, to be honest. The guide also mentions the physical demands. You're going to be on your feet a lot, potentially patrolling large areas, maybe climbing stairs, responding to incidents that could require physical intervention.
Right, so physical fitness is key. And then there's those irregular hours we keep mentioning. Late night shifts, weekends, holidays that can be tough on your work-life balance.
It could be a real challenge. You need to be flexible and willing to work when others are off enjoying themselves.
Sounds like this role requires a certain level of commitment and a willingness to go the extra mile.
It does. And, another point the guide subtly alludes to is the potential emotional toll. You're going to witness things, deal with situations that can be emotionally challenging, theft, vandalism, substance abuse, even violence. It's not always pretty,
That's the side of hospitality that most people don't see. It's important to be aware of that going in.
for sure. It's not all smiles and room service.
Definitely not. Okay, so we've covered the challenges. Now let's shift gears for a moment and talk about the interview process. The guide offers some fantastic insights into what to expect, even providing specific questions you might be asked.
Right. It's super helpful because it's one thing to know about the job, but then you actually have to sit down and articulate those skills and experiences in an interview.
You have to sell yourself. So let's give our listeners the inside scoop. What kind of questions should they be prepared for?
Well, some are pretty standard, like what experience do you have in the security industry? Or how familiar are you with security systems and technologies used in hospitality settings? They want to know your background, but then you'll get those scenario-based questions like, how would you handle a security breach? Or what would you do if a guest refused to leave the property after being asked? They want to see how you think on your feet.
Those make sense. They need to know you can handle the pressure.
Exactly. And then there are the behavioral questions. These are designed to assess those soft skills, how you handle those trickier interpersonal situations. So for instance, they might ask, how do you handle difficult or confrontational situations? Or tell us about a time when you had to deal with the difficult customer.
Classic behavioral interview questions. They always seem to come up.
They do, but they're important. They reveal a lot about your character and how you react under pressure.
Absolutely. Now, because this is a hospitality-focused role, you'll probably also get questions that target those specific skills, like how do you balance security measures with providing excellent customer service?
Exactly. They might ask, how do you create a safe and secure environment without compromising the guest experience? They want to see that you understand the delicate balance.
It's not just about being a stickler for the rules, it's about being tactful and understanding.
And they'll definitely want to know about your awareness of laws and regulations.
Yeah.
They might ask, how do you ensure all security measures are in compliance?
Right, they need to know you're not just following orders blindly, you understand the why behind the rules.
Exactly. And the best part, the guide doesn't just leave you hanging with a list of potential questions. They actually provide links to detailed guides on how to craft strong answers.
It's like having a roadmap to interview success. This RoleCatcher guide really is incredible.
It's amazing. It doesn't just tell you about the job, it helps you prepare for every step of the way. And I think one of the most important takeaways is that it's not just about landing the job, it's about investing in yourself and your skills to build a successful, fulfilling career.
It's about taking ownership of your professional journey and always striving to learn and grow.
Exactly. Continuous learning is key.
Now, we've talked a lot about what it takes to succeed as a hospitality establishment security officer, but the guide also does something really interesting. It breaks down what your potential career trajectory could look like, so starting from those entry-level positions and going all the way to the top. Oh, that's cool. I'd love to hear more about that. What does that career path look like?
Well, imagine this.
So imagine you're just starting out, fresh out of training. You're an entry-level security officer. What's your day-to-day like?
You're the eyes and ears of the place. Lots of patrolling, getting to know every nook and cranny of the property.
Yeah, making sure everything looks safe and secure.
Exactly. And of course, getting familiar with those surveillance systems. You'll be spending a lot of time monitoring feeds, learning to spot anything unusual.
Becoming a pro at spotting things others might miss.
Right. And while you're doing all that, you're also building relationships. Remember how we talked about communication being key?
Yeah, it's not just about working in isolation.
Exactly. Even as an entry-level officer, you're interacting with guests, staff from different departments, maybe even local law enforcement. It's about being part of a team.
So you're learning the ropes, building those connections. Now let's say you've put in the time, you've proven yourself, you're ready for that next step. The guide talks about the security supervisor role. What does that look like?
More responsibility, for sure. As a security supervisor, you're not just following procedures. You might be involved in creating them. You could be tasked with conducting security assessments, finding those vulnerabilities, figuring out how to improve protocols.
Okay, so it becomes more strategic, more about prevention.
Right. It's about anticipating problems before they happen. And you're starting to lead others. You might be training new officers, assigning duties, overseeing their work, making sure everyone's following protocol.
So leadership skills become crucial at this level.
Absolutely. You got to be able to delegate effectively, resolve conflicts, motivate your team. You're responsible not just for your own performance, but for theirs as well.
That's a big responsibility. And the guide also talks about collaborating with other departments, right?
Yeah, that's huge. Think about it. You've got the front desk, housekeeping, food and beverage, maintenance. They all play a role in keeping the place safe and secure.
It's all connected.
Exactly. So as a security supervisor, you might work with the front desk, say, to improve their check-in procedures, identify potential security risks, or you might coordinate with housekeeping, making sure they know how to handle lost and found items securely, how to report suspicious activity. And, of course, you'll probably work closely with maintenance, making sure all the security systems are up to snuff.
It's about being that liaison, that bridge between security and everyone else.
Exactly. You're making sure everyone's on the same page.
Okay, so you've mastered being a security supervisor, honed those leadership skills. What's next on this career ladder?
Security manager. This is where things get really exciting. Now you're overseeing the entire security operation for the establishment.
The big leaks?
Right. You're not just managing a team of officers. You're managing budgets, resources. You might even work with outside security contractors.
So it's a much broader role, more administrative, strategic.
Exactly. Big picture thinking. You're conducting those large-scale risk assessments, developing long-term security plans, making sure the establishment is ready for anything.
Sounds high pressure, but also really rewarding.
Oh, it is. You have a real impact on the safety and security of everyone and everything on that property. And speaking of impact, the guide also talks about the director of security position. That's like the pinnacle of the career path.
Okay, take us to the top. What does a director of security do?
You're basically the security czar. You're responsible for setting the overall security strategy for the entire organization.
So not just one hotel or resort, but a whole chain of them.
Exactly. Multiple locations, potentially even international. You're collaborating with top executives, setting those overarching security standards, staying ahead of the curve on emerging threats. You have to be in the know.
Wow, what a journey. From patrolling hallways to basically running the show. It's amazing how far you can go in this field.
It is, and the guide really emphasizes that it's not just about climbing the ladder. It's about constantly learning, growing, nurturing your passion for this field.
It's about that drive to keep improving, to be the best you can be. This has been an incredible deep dive. We've covered so much ground. The responsibilities, the skills, those everyday challenges, the potential career path. It's amazing how much depth there is to this role.
It really is. And I think if there's one thing to take away from all of this, it's that being a hospitality establishment security officer is so much more than just being a guard.
It's about being a problem solver, a communicator, a leader, a protector. It's about making sure everyone who walks through those doors feels safe and secure.
Well said. It's about creating a space where people can truly relax and enjoy themselves.
And for the right person, this can be an incredibly rewarding career.
It absolutely can.
So for our listeners out there who've been thinking about this path, we hope this deep dive has given you a clearer picture of what to expect. The good, the challenging, all of it.
And remember, the world of work is changing fast. Technology is transforming how we find jobs, how we do our jobs, what skills we need. This RoleCatcher guide really highlights that.
It's a good reminder to stay curious, stay adaptable, never stop learning.
Couldn't agree more.
Well, on that note, it's time for us to wrap up this deep dive. Thank you for joining us as we explored the world of hospitality establishment security officers. We'll see you next time for another exciting journey into the world of work.